Hello, thank you so much for coming to hang out with me today. I say today, but I actually mean the next several months because I am officially going to get started on remodeling my kitchen. I've redone most of the downstairs to suit a little bit more of my vintage sensibilities, but now the kitchen stands out like a sore thumb. So my kitchen is mostly whites and grays, which there's nothing wrong with, but it's just not personally my style. So I'm going to show you some of the inspiration photos that I pinned for myself. And after I started, kind of aggregating all of those, I went through and I started to identify a lot of the elements that I saw repeating in all of the photos I was collecting. So the main things that I found myself drawn to over and over again were a very sage greeny kind of color palette, specifically a very monochromatic sage green color palette. And then also a lot of copper and dark wood tone vibes, as well as a very vintagey, cottagey kind of aesthetic. So with those elements in mind, I put together a little inspiration board for myself because especially with bigger, larger, longer projects, I kind of tend to wander and I really wanted to save myself from regret down the road by straying from what I knew that I wanted at the beginning of this. So if you are a fan of non-OSHA condoned power tool usage, floor goblin crafting sessions, or just watching somebody slowly lose their sanity, then I invite you to join us on the next several months of chaos. So I think that's more than enough rambling because we don't really have any time to spare. So let's go check in with the first phase of the project. All right. First things first with this kitchen is I really need to replace the flooring. It is super busted up. It actually is breaking apart into pieces as we walk on it. I'm not entirely sure if that is the fault of the flooring itself, if it's too thin, or if it's the fault of all of the layers of flooring below it. I do know that it is installed over several layers of old sheet vinyl, which I have to imagine aren't very level. So that is my best guess, is that the surface below our current flooring isn't level enough and it's creating voids that when we step on them, it's allowing that flooring to go beyond its limits and crack. So I ordered some more flooring through Costco because they at least have a really good return policy if this stuff doesn't work out. But to get the flooring installed, the first thing I'm going to have to do is take all of my appliances out of the kitchen. So I'm going to go move everything in my kitchen and I will check back in. These are all the cat toys I found under our fridge and the main suspect. Thankfully, this flooring was ridiculously easy to pull up, and after taking up the old moisture barrier, we discovered the issue. Underneath our current floor was an old layer of brick pattern linoleum, which, aside from being very stylish, was also very full of holes. All the spots where the linoleum was missing was where our floor was cracking because of that minuscule height difference. To solve that issue, we pulled up the remaining linoleum and the old threshold. The wooden subfloor was overall in good condition, but I treated a little bit of mildew in the subfloor with bleach and a hairdryer. Then I painted the subfloor with a mold and mildew resistant primer, and also caulked the perimeter of the room with silicone, which is admittedly a little overkill. We laid out a new moisture barrier, and then we could finally start laying down the new flooring. The assistant was, as always, very unhelpful, but we started by opening all 6 boxes of flooring and mixing them together, then sorting them by pattern. This helps to hide any color variation between boxes, and it also helped me ensure that no board patterns were laid right next to each other. This is a floating LVP floor, so we just had to cut any pieces to fit with our miter saw, and then click them together on the floor using a tapping block. Without an oven, we ended up getting pretty creative with our crock pot for several days. So we are done with the flooring. I'm going to hold off on doing a reveal of it until we are actually done with the kitchen. But next on the list is painting. So I chose the color Clary Sage by Sherwin-Williams. That is this middle color. So this is Clary Sage, 25% lighter. This is Clary Sage, and this is Spelt Sage. I chose a blue sage and a yellow sage to see which would complement the floor and the countertop better. And Logan and I both agreed that the blue sage was the way to go. So I'm just going to go with my gut and use the full strength Clary Sage. And I can't back out now because I already bought the paint. And now I am going to paint, second coat of paint, put the baseboards back in, and then we can finally bring the appliances back in. So I'm gonna get started and check back with you later. I find painting pretty therapeutic, but I am mourning these overalls that I spilled paint all over. We did also end up painting the ceiling in Sherwin-Williams Livable Green, which is essentially like a lighter Clary Sage. After painting, I was able to reinstall our baseboards and also caulk them on the top and the bottom. My next task was to refinish a hutch for some extra pantry space to replace our old flat pack white one. Thanks for helping me get it. Ooh, he's so strong. I found this one on Facebook Marketplace for $50 and got right to work sanding the old finish off. This shellac dust was really gummy when heated up, so in between every pass with the sander, I had to stop and wipe the whole surface down. So the next thing I need to do is actually get to staining the cabinet. So I'm going to use two different products here. I'm going to use a pre-stain conditioner, and then I'm going to be using an oil-based stain. It's not a 2-in-1 like poly and stain, because I haven't decided what I want to do as a sealant. The obvious answer is some sort of polyurethane. I could also use the same company, Minwax, make something called polyacrylic, which is a non-oil based, it's a water-based finish. I could also just do a rubbed wax finish. I want it to look as rustic and antique as possible. So I'm leaning towards something like a wax finish, but that comes with the knowledge that it won't be as durable, and I might have to re-wax it again in the future. So I'm just weighing my options between those, but to give myself the flexibility to choose in the future, I'm just using a plain stain. This stain is in the color Espresso, and I'm going to be doing my first coat on this shelf. It's for the underneath cabinet, so if I mess up, I can hide it or like wrap it in wallpaper or paint it or something and nobody will know. So that's going to be my test patch. So essentially what the process is going to be here is I have to brush on the pre-conditioner. I have to wait 5 to 15 minutes for it to soak in, and then I have to wipe it off. And a very important thing to remember when using any sort of oil-based product like this, not all of them, but check the back. Most of them will spontaneously combust because they release heat as they dry. So if they are piled together in a pile or in an enclosed space, they can very easily build up enough heat to spontaneously combust. So any rags or brushes or anything that have been soaked in this material or used to wipe it up have to be laid flat in a very well ventilated location so that they can actually dissipate the heat and not catch your entire everything on fire. So, so I'm just going to get started and try to work around this blinding sun and see how fast I can get in and out of here. The back of this hutch was just a piece of that printed MDF cardboard material, so I took it off with some vague plans to try to paint it dark to match the stain. However, I realized that I had some old cedar tongue and groove planks, so I decided to make a new back with those. I ripped all the boards down to length and stained them, then I repaired some damage to the hutch before installing the new back with some brad nails shot into the top and bottom of each board. The finishing touch was polishing the brass hardware and rubbing the whole hutch down with some dark furniture wax, which I think really made it look more vintage and handmade. The other big projects in here were to replace one of our upper cabinets with an open shelf and then to add in a new backsplash. Taking this cabinet down allowed us to hang a pendant light over our sink for some more task lighting. There was actually already an electrical box there that had been closed off when they put the cabinet up, so it was an easy switch. I made the shelf myself by layering together multiple layers of the generic project boards from Lowe's. The brackets we had bought were just under 2 inches tall in the back, so to hide them I had to make the shelf that thick as well. After gluing and nailing the boards together, I did about 4 rounds of wood filler and sanding to make it nice and smooth. I finished it off with multiple layers of auto primer and white spray paint for the smoothest possible finish. However, I couldn't install it until we had started on the backsplash. The next thing that needs to happen is changing this backsplash. So I know white subway tile is like the default kind of neutral that everybody likes. I just don't like it. It's not my style. So I am going to be replacing it with actually a beadboard paneling. I am taking the lazy, easy way out and I'm gluing the paneling straight onto the tile. I will be priming, painting, and sealing them on all of the face, all of the cut edges, and on the back of them, just to prevent any moisture issues in the future. I'll also be sealing all of the seams and edges with silicone. So, with that being said, I get to do a lot of math. Pray for me. I really wanted to find a way to make this beadboard paneling removable for the next person because I know that the white subway tile is so palatable to a wide range of people. What I might try to do is essentially, instead of applying the glue to the beadboard, I might try to apply the glue to the tile directly so that I can hopefully avoid the grout lines and essentially put dabs of glue in the middle of the tiles and then press the beadboard onto it, because that would give the next person the best chance at cleanly removing the glue and restoring the tiles if that's what they desire. Thankfully, we managed to get the beadboard home by strapping it down to my husband's roof rack because no way was that fitting in either of our cars, and we had not bothered to measure beforehand. To mark the placement of the outlets, I used my favorite toothpaste hack, which I love because it helps me avoid math. I painted all of the cut pieces of beadboard with Sherwin-Williams Livable Green, the same color that we used on our ceiling, and then sprayed them all with a semi-gloss polyurethane. To install them, I wiped down all the subway tiles and piped construction adhesive onto every single tile. This glue needs at least 15 minutes of pressure to have the best bond, so I got pretty creative with the bracing. In some areas, I was able to shoot brad nails into the cabinet supports, and at the bottom I braced it against the faucet. We went ahead and replaced our outlets with some new GFCI ones, which is safer for us since we have knob and tube wiring. And even with modern wiring, I believe most codes call for GFCI in kitchens and bathrooms. Once the bottom section of beadboard had been applied, I was able to install our open shelf and then put the beadboard above it as well. Hello! It is it's gotta be over day 60 by now of this project, which in the grand scheme of home renovation, DIY home renovation is not a very long time, but in the sense of having a very messy, slightly unusable kitchen and using up all of my after work time on it, it is starting to feel like a very long time. And I just hit my breaking point yesterday because we installed this beadboard as a backsplash and then installed it, caulked it, put the touch-up paint on, only to realize that the spray poly I was using had a much heavier amber tint than I realized, but it was a spray-on, so I just didn't realize in as thin of a coat as it was going on, I didn't realize how much it was building up. So now, when I actually put the original paint on to touch up where I've caulked the seams, it's a completely different color, which means that I am going to have to repaint all the beadboard now that it's on the wall. So what I originally had done was, it's the same color as the ceiling, but the ceiling is a flat paint. So originally I just used the flat paint and then a semi-gloss polyurethane over that so that I could use up some of that flat ceiling paint because I didn't use very much. But there's no way I'm spraying polyurethane in my kitchen. There's also no way that I'm doing separate paint and poly. So I went and I just bought a quart of the same color in a semi-gloss finish, and I'm going to do, hopefully, 1 or 2 coats of semi-gloss on these beadboards, and then I will reseal any seams that need resealed, and I will just call it a day. And I'm gonna yeet myself off a bridge. For my next trick, I'm going to turn this into this. Since we were on a budget, I chose to revamp our current flush mount light instead of buying a new one. I cut out most of those geometric patterns and then I literally rebuilt it with actual trash. I made the faux brackets with plastic strapping and beads and then just spray painted it. And no, I am not taking criticism on my trash light. Now get ready for some rapid fire crafting because I'm about to show you a ton of different side projects that I was working on. I made a brass pot rail out of curtain rod brackets, lighting down rods, and some S-hooks that I've had sitting around. I made some faux stained glass panels for my transom window. To see this technique more in depth, check out my other video on it. I wired in our new pendant light, which came with the cutest little light bulb. I sewed 2 sets of curtains for our back door and to hide the microwave in the hutch out of this lovely sage green toile fabric. I literally don't know where my brain went because at first I made the hutch curtains a full 3 inches too short. I also designed these labels for all the canisters in my hutch and I am obsessed with how cottagecore they turned out. The last thing I did before decorating was to redo our cabinet handles with an auto primer and my favorite gold spray paint. So, just a reminder, this is what the kitchen looked like before. And after 2 solid months of work, this is the after. Okay, we are finished. It only took, I don't know how long, I'm going insane. Yeah, that took us a little over 2 months. So I think I was pretty right on the money with my initial estimate, but that was really difficult. Every single phase of that, every single project was a pretty steep learning curve for both of us. It was just a lot of new things to learn and new things to explore, and I really enjoyed getting to do a lot of those artistic projects that I think put the final finishing touch on it. So I adore it. I really like being in my kitchen now. I have this lovely, cozy feeling with the floor and the sage green walls, and I don't have to have the evil overhead light on. I can just have like my nice task lights on. Everything was new and a learning curve, but it was all doable. You know, we live in the golden age of DIYing. I mean, you can learn how to do anything just with a little bit of research and a little bit of innovation and a lot of perseverance. I don't know. I guess I just hope that, like, if anything, some of the videos I put up can encourage you to pick up your first power tool and just give something a go. I just want to encourage you, if there's something that you're wanting to try out, a new skill that you're wanting to learn, just do it.
Just do it!
I'm probably not going to take too much longer on this wrap up, because I don't know what else there is to say that wasn't said in the video itself. But I had a really good time, and I hope you did too. And I'm now going to go sleep for 50,000 years, and I will see you in the next video.